The damp November chill of Seattle, Washington, bit through the tailored fabric of Eleanor Vance's coat as she stood at the edge of the crowd. On the polished concrete stage, framed by oversized glass windows overlooking Puget Sound, stood her son Brandon and his wife Chloe. Behind them hung a massive silk banner in dark navy and metallic gold. Vance Architectural Group and Design. Microphone in hand, Chloe was addressing the crowd of local investors, city council members, and lifestyle bloggers. Her smile was brilliant, her white designer suit immaculate, her voice dripping with calculated charm. When Brandon and I founded Vance Group 4 years ago, Chloe announced into the microphone, her voice echoing in the glass atrium. We started with a dream, zero capital, and endless late nights in a cramped studio apartment. We built every inch of this firm with our own sweat, sacrifice, and absolute independence. In the second row, Eleanor's longtime friend and estate attorney Samuel leaned over. Zero capital? He whispered dryly. Did she forget who liquidated a $450,000 commercial property in Bellevue to fund their first office space? Eleanor didn't answer. Her face remained a calm, unreadable mask. For 4 years, Eleanor, a 64-year-old retired structural engineer who spent 30 years calculating load-bearing capacities for high-rises, had been the silent engine behind Brandon's company. When Brandon dropped out of his master's program to start his own firm, Eleanor didn't just write a check. She became the silent partner. Because Brandon lacked the licensing credentials and capital required for municipal commercial bidding, Eleanor held 51% of the parent holding company, Vance Engineering Holdings LLC, quietly reviewing blueprint calculations, co-signing commercial credit lines, and underwriting their liability insurance policies. When Brandon married Chloe, a hyper-ambitious former corporate PR strategist, Eleanor voluntarily stepped into the background. She didn't want to smother her son's marriage. She signed non-disclosure agreements for their high-profile clients, quietly approved quarterly credit line extensions from her laptop, and let Chloe take full public credit as the co-founder and visionary strategist. Eleanor was content to let them shine. But ambition without gratitude quickly turns into arrogance. The speech concluded with thunderous applause. Waiters in black aprons began circulating with champagne flutes. Eleanor stepped forward, intending to briefly congratulate her son before slipping away to her home in Mercer Island. She approached the edge of the stage where Brandon and Chloe were surrounded by a group of wealthy tech investors. "Brandon," Eleanor said gently, placing a hand on her son's arm. "The studio space looks magnificent. Your beam alignment in the north wing turned out exactly as we drafted." Before Brandon could answer, Chloe stepped sharply between them. She placed a manicured hand on Eleanor's forearm, not in affection, but with the firm pressure of security ushering out an unwanted intruder. "Eleanor, thank you for coming," Chloe said, keeping her voice low so the investors wouldn't hear, though her eyes were ice cold. "But as we discussed last week, today is about Vance Group's new corporate identity. We're launching our luxury branding." "I just wanted to congratulate my son Chloe," Eleanor replied smoothly. "And he appreciates it," Chloe said, her tone snapping into a razor-sharp whisper. "But frankly, having family hovering around makes the firm look like a mom-and-pop shop. We have venture capitalists here from San Francisco. Brandon needs to project authority, not look like a boy whose mother checks his homework." Brandon flushed red, looking down at his polished leather shoes. He didn't defend his mother. He didn't say a word. "We need total space and separation, Eleanor," Chloe continued, leaning in closer. "Professional boundaries. In fact, we've updated the VIP guest list for the private dinner tonight at Canlis. It's strictly for strategic stakeholders and equity partners. We didn't reserve a seat for you." "A seat for strategic stakeholders," Eleanor repeated, her voice perfectly even. "I see. It's nothing personal," Chloe added, with a tight, dismissive fake smile. "It's just business. We need to stand on our own 2 feet without old-fashioned interference. I'm sure you understand." Eleanor looked past Chloe to her son. "Brandon, is this your sentiment as well?" Brandon cleared his throat, avoiding his mother's eyes. "Mom, Chloe is right about the branding. We need to establish total independence. We can catch up in a few weeks for coffee or something. Once the chaos settles down. Eleanor looked at her son for 5 long seconds. She saw a 32-year-old man who had forgotten the foundational engineering rule. If you dismantle the primary load-bearing pillar, the roof comes down. Very well, Eleanor said quietly. You want absolute independence and professional boundaries. I will give you precisely what you've asked for. She didn't make a scene. She didn't throw her champagne glass or raise her voice. She turned on her heel and walked out of the glass atrium into the chilly November rain, where Samuel was waiting by her Lexus. How bad was it? Samuel asked, opening the passenger door for her. They just disowned the mom-and-pop presents, Eleanor said, settling into the leather seat. Chloe informed me that tonight's private partner dinner is strictly for equity holders and financial guarantors. She said it was just business. Samuel chuckled as he started the engine. She really has no idea who owns the land under that building, does she? Neither of them does, Eleanor said, pulling a leather-bound notebook from her purse and clicking her fountain pen. Brandon was too lazy to read the master operating agreement 4 years ago, and Chloe was too arrogant to audit the parent company structure. She opened the notebook to the page titled Vance Holdings and Asset Allocation. Call the credit underwriters at First National Bank, Eleanor commanded softly, her eyes glinting with cold, structural precision. And get our commercial property attorney on the line. If they want to operate as an independent firm without family interference, it's time they pay market price for every single beam holding up their roof. By 8 a.m. on Thursday morning, the rain had cleared over Mercer Island, leaving the air crisp and biting. Eleanor sat at her massive oak desk, two glowing monitors illuminating her calm, composed face. Beside her keyboard rested a fresh mug of dark roast coffee and a pristine white folder, stamped with the red seal of Vance Engineering Holdings, LLC. When Brandon and Chloe started the company, Brandon had signed a master corporate framework to secure his mother's initial funding and engineering license backup. But because he was focused entirely on interior design concepts and press releases, he had signed the document package as a single bulk file without reading the fine print. He assumed his mother's involvement was a casual family arrangement. He didn't realize that in the corporate world, unconditional maternal love does not overwrite legal contracts. Samuel walked into Eleanor's study, carrying a stack of notarized financial disclosures. He pulled up a leather chair across from her desk and smiled dryly. I spoke with First National Commercial Bank at 7:30 a.m., Samuel said, sliding the top document forward. As the 51% primary guarantor of Vance Architectural Group's $1.2 million revolving corporate credit line, you have full unilateral authority to request an immediate risk assessment and asset separation. And what did the bank say? Eleanor asked, sipping her coffee. The moment I inform them that you are revoking your personal liquid collateral and stepping down as the primary structural design guarantor, their legal compliance team went into red alert, Samuel explained. Without your engineering license on file and your personal asset backstop, Vance Group's risk tier jumped from Tier 1 prime to Tier 4 high risk instantly. Good, Eleanor said smoothly. Now let's talk about the flagship showroom in downtown Seattle. The sleek 6,000-square-foot glass and steel building where Chloe had hosted her grand ribbon-cutting ceremony 2 nights ago was not leased from a third-party corporate landlord. 4 years ago, when the building went into commercial foreclosure, Eleanor had quietly purchased the property through her secondary asset vehicle, Pacific Horizon Properties, LLC. She had granted Brandon's firm a heavily subsidized family startup rate of $4,500 a month, triple net, nearly 70% below the actual commercial market value of $14,000 a month for prime Seattle waterfront space. Furthermore, the lease agreement contained an annual personal guarantee renewal clause that required Eleanor's signature every November 15th to maintain the subsidized rate. November 15th was tomorrow. Eleanor opened her laptop, logged into the commercial banking portal, and initiated a series of precise financial adjustments. Credit line separation. she officially filed a formal notice of guarantor withdrawal with First National Bank, freezing the $1.2 million revolving line of credit, effective in 48 hours. Subsidized lease. Expiration. She instructed Pacific Horizon Properties, LLC, to issue a formal lease modification and market rate adjustment notice to Vance Architectural Group. Licensing compliance withdrawal. She submitted a formal filing to the Washington State Department of Licensing, removing her master structural engineer license from Vance Architectural Group's corporate profile, legally restricting them from bidding on high-rise commercial projects over 3 stories without hiring a third-party licensed engineering firm. "This is going to sting," Samuel noted, watching her execute the transactions with calm, mathematical precision. Chloe just signed a lease commitment for a new fleet of corporate Teslas, and they just hired 3 senior interior designers from San Francisco based on that revolving credit line. Chloe wanted professional boundaries and total independence. Eleanor replied, closing her laptop screen with a soft click. In the corporate world, independence means paying your own overhead, securing your own credit lines, and bearing the full market cost of your ambition. Meanwhile, in the corner office of the newly opened waterfront showroom, Chloe Vance was enjoying her morning. She sat behind her Italian marble desk, holding a cup of artisanal oat milk latte, admiring the glowing write-up of the ribbon-cutting event in Seattle Business Monthly. Brandon was standing near the window, reviewing design renderings for a $4 million luxury condominium project in Bellevue. Suddenly, Brandon's phone buzzed sharply. Then Chloe's laptop chimed with an urgent notification sound from their corporate banking portal. Brandon picked up his phone. "Hello, Marcus? Wait, slow down. What do you mean the payroll draft failed?" Chloe sat up straight, her latte forgotten. "What are you talking about?" "Our account manager at First National," Brandon stammered, his face turning pale as he listened to the voice on the receiver. "He says our revolving line of credit has been temporarily locked pending a structural credit reevaluation. He said our primary asset guarantor withdrew their signature." "What?" Chloe snapped, jumping out of her chair and rushing to Brandon's side. "Who is the guarantor? We own this company." Before Brandon could answer, an express courier knocked on the frosted glass door of their office and handed Chloe a heavy white envelope. Chloe tore it open. Inside were 2 official legal notices. The first was from Pacific Horizon Properties, LLC, informing Vance Architectural Group that their subsidized lease of $4,500 per month was expiring on November 15th. The new lease rate, reflective of current Seattle waterfront market pricing, was $14,500 per month, plus common area maintenance fees, with a required security deposit adjustment of $30,000 due by Friday at 5 p.m. The second letter was from the Washington State Licensing Board, notifying them that due to the withdrawal of senior licensed engineer Eleanor Vance, Vance Architectural Group was immediately suspended from executing municipal structural bids until a qualified replacement engineer was placed on retainer. Chloe stared at the papers, her breath catching in her throat. Pacific Horizon Properties? Who the hell is Pacific Horizon? Brandon slumped into a leather armchair, burying his head in his hands. "It's my mother, Chloe." Chloe froze, her sharp blue eyes widening in sudden, terrifying realization. "What?" "Pacific Horizon is Mom's real estate holdings firm," Brandon whispered, his voice trembling. "She bought this building 4 years ago, so I wouldn't have to pay commercial retail rent. And the credit line at First National? Mom's personal portfolio was the collateral that backed our borrowing power." Chloe's arrogance shattered instantly, replaced by a wave of cold panic. "You told me you built this firm. You told me your mother was just a retired housewife who gave you a small starting loan." "She's a retired senior structural engineer, Chloe," Brandon yelled, standing up with a flushed face. "I told you she helped us set up the company. You're the one who insisted on pushing her out. You're the one who banned her from the VIP dinner and told her she was an unwanted intruder making us look like a mom-and-pop shop." "I didn't know she owned the building," Chloe shrieked, clutching the legal notice. "Call her! Call her right now and fix this. We have payroll due on Monday, and the Bellevue project contract will fall through if we lose our engineering clearance. Brandon pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed his mother's number. On the third ring, the call connected. "Mom," Brandon blurted out, his voice cracking with desperation. "Mom, please. There's been a massive misunderstanding." From her sunlit kitchen on Mercer Island, Eleanor took a calm sip of her Earl Grey tea. "Hello, Brandon," Eleanor said, her tone smooth, pleasant, and completely devoid of emotion. "I assume you and Chloe received the updated operational terms?" The silence on the phone line hung heavy and suffocating. In the corner office of the Seattle waterfront showroom, Brandon gripped his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white, while Chloe hovered beside him, her breathing ragged with panic. "Mom, please," Brandon pleaded, his voice stripped of all the corporate confidence he had projected 2 nights ago. "First National locked our credit line. Our payroll is going to bounce on Monday, and Pacific Horizon just tripled our rent. We can't afford $14,500 a month right now, plus a $30,000 deposit." "I am well aware of the figures, Brandon," Eleanor replied calmly from her quiet kitchen on Mercer Island. "I calculated them myself." "Why are you doing this?" Chloe grabbed the phone from Brandon's hand, her voice sharp with manic desperation, drop-shipping her polished facade. "Eleanor, this is sabotage. We are family. You're ruining your own son's business over a minor misunderstanding at a party." Eleanor set her teacup down onto its porcelain saucer with a tiny, delicate click. "Chloe," Eleanor said, her voice dropping into a register of cool, unshakable authority. "On Tuesday evening, you clearly explained to me that today's corporate ecosystem requires strict professional boundaries. You told me that having family involved was unprofessional, that I made your firm look like a mom-and-pop shop, and that your private dinner was reserved strictly for equity holders and financial guarantors. I was stressed. It was just branding strategy." "It was an audit of reality," Eleanor interrupted smoothly. "You wanted total separation from my old-fashioned interference. As an equity holder and primary guarantor, I simply obliged. Strangers do not subsidize $10,000 of monthly commercial rent out of maternal goodwill. Strangers do not pledge multi-million-dollar asset portfolios so you can drive leased Teslas and hire San Francisco designers." "Mom, please." Brandon took the phone back, tears of shame welling in his eyes. "I'm sorry, I was spineless. I should have stood up for you at the ribbon cutting. I should have told Chloe no, please. Just sign the guarantor renewal for the bank. We'll pay market rent. Just don't freeze the credit line." Eleanor looked out her window at the calm blue waters of Puget Sound. She felt a brief, distant sting of maternal sorrow for the boy she had raised, a boy who had traded his character for comfort and let his wife treat his mother like an inconvenient charity case. But she knew that rescuing him now would only perpetuate his weakness. "Brandon," Eleanor said softly, her words carrying the quiet weight of absolute finality, "building a structural foundation requires load-bearing strength, not apologies after the roof collapses. You chose to let your wife treat my sacrifice as an entitlement. Now, you must learn the actual cost of the independence you celebrated." "Mom, wait. My estate attorney, Samuel, will handle all future communications regarding the commercial lease and corporate asset separation," Eleanor added. "Do not call my personal line regarding business matters again. As Chloe said, it's just business." She ended the call. Eleanor placed her phone face down on the granite countertop. She didn't cry. She didn't feel rage or bitter triumph. Instead, a profound, peaceful quiet settled over her house, the quiet that comes when an old, heavy burden is finally put down for good. Over the next 6 weeks, the natural laws of financial reality asserted themselves with brutal efficiency. Without Eleanor's personal asset backstop, First National Bank refused to restore the revolving $1.2 million credit line. Vance Architectural Group was forced to break their leases on the luxury corporate fleet and lay off 4 newly hired staff members. Unable to produce a licensed senior structural engineer on retainer, they lost the $4 million Bellevue condominium contract to a rival firm down the street. To prevent immediate eviction from the waterfront showroom, Chloe had to liquidate her personal savings and sell off her high-end designer wardrobe to cover the updated $14,500 market rent and security deposit to Pacific Horizon Properties, LLC. The shiny, arrogant illusion of effortless luxury had dissolved overnight, leaving Brandon and Chloe grinding out 70-hour work weeks in a scaled-down office, personally answering client phone calls and paying full price for every single pencil, permit, and utility bill. Meanwhile, on Mercer Island, winter arrived with soft gray clouds and crisp, fresh snowfall. Eleanor restructured her living trust with Samuel, permanently removing Brandon as a direct corporate beneficiary and placing her commercial properties into an independent educational trust for her future grandchildren, managed strictly by a neutral corporate trustee. Her days grew rich and wonderfully expansive. She joined a private historical preservation board in downtown Seattle, advising the city on the structural restoration of 19th-century brick landmarks. On Friday afternoons, she took private oil painting lessons in a sunlit loft, making close friends with local architects and historians who valued her sharp mind, immense expertise, and quiet dignity. One rainy Sunday afternoon in late December, Eleanor sat by her fireplace, wrapped in a soft cashmere throw, reading a book on maritime engineering. Her phone chimed with a text message from Brandon. "Mom, we downsized to a small studio in Pioneer Square. We paid off the credit adjustment. I'm taking my engineering recertification exams next month. I know I don't deserve it, but if you're free sometime, I'd love to buy you a cup of tea. No business, just your son." Eleanor looked at the message for a long moment. She didn't feel anger, nor did she feel a rush to fix his life. He was finally doing the hard work of becoming a real man, standing on his own feet, without her quiet labor as an invisible safety net. She typed a simple, elegant reply. "I am glad to hear you are taking your exams, Brandon. Focus on your studies. We can talk in the spring." She set her phone aside, picked up her teacup, and took a warm, satisfying sip. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, illuminating a life reclaimed on her own terms, undiminished, unbothered, and entirely peaceful.